Aloha! Welcome to the Live Ukulele podcast. My name is Brad Bordessa, and I've got something kind of special to share with you folks this episode. My friend Mr. Dagan Bernstein released a new album of material, or rather an EP, which is kind of what we do these days, that I participated in kind of producing and recording additional instrumental and backup tracks for him, and then also mixing the project. So what I was going to do today is address a question that I was emailed a few days ago, and to kind of elaborate on my answer, I thought we could dissect some of these songs that we recorded with Dagan and just kind of break down what my thought process was and what I did as I was working on the songs and the different parts that I was inspired to play to kind of complement what already existed. And we can talk about how the different tracks fit together and, why you would maybe play one part in one situation and another part in another situation. I've been wanting to do this for a while, but the tech logistical side of things is a little bit confusing and clunky. But now that I got this lovely question from Marge, I'm going to have a crack at it and get started. Before we do that, just want to say thank you once again to Joel Bleshinger at Ukelogic Strings for always being so gracious in sending me new strings when I ask. Really appreciate what you do. And if you folks out there are looking for a new set of ukulele strings, I highly, highly recommend these fluorocarbon options from Joel. He does tech setup. He was on the podcast. If you haven't listened to his podcast episode, that would be a great one to go check out. It's very interesting. He talked a lot about his work at Hawaii Music Supply, all the setup he does, and also about creating the string sets. If you want to help the podcast, please go click the subscribe button from wherever you are listening along. It would help boost the visibility, and I appreciate it very much. Additionally, please go check out liveukulele.com, and if you're inclined, go over to the store page and see what I've got available there. Got some ebooks and different learning resources. And I am slowly but surely working on my left-hand technique for ukulele course. I am just about up to 30 videos, all recorded and edited and uploaded in the bag. I'm actually spending today working on kind of putting the videos into the actual web pages that you will navigate through the course with. I'm loving how it's coming together. It's really turning into sort of an everything I could ever want a student to know sort of thing, which I think is going to be very powerful. And if anybody ever asks me again for a lesson, I can just say, here's what I would teach you if we did lessons. And so I'm really looking forward to sharing that with you guys. Please stay tuned. I will keep you updated, but I think we're about halfway there, if not a little bit more than halfway, and I'm really starting to get pumped. So without any further ado, let's jump right into the content, and I will pull up Marge's email and read you her question. So Marge said, "Can you speak to when a person should strum and when they should pick? I look at a piece of music with the tab and I feel like a deer in the headlights. What am I supposed to do when?" And this is a question that I've been asked a number of times over the years in different ways. And it's always super interesting because for myself, where I'm at as a musician, you just do it. You just play what you intuitively think fits the song or the part that you need to be playing. And so to kind of break it down and think about it in a deeper way is interesting for me because I kind of have to take a step back and really, understand my process in what I try and present when I play something. But from a basic standpoint, you need to understand that music is made up of three main components. First of all, there's rhythm, which is the beat of something, what the duration of the notes are, how they are placed rhythmically in time. And this affects both of the following items. The first of which is the melody. That's the second aspect. The melody is usually what the vocalist will sing. It's the lead part that a guitar solo would play. It can be a lot of different things. It's the main violin in an orchestra, perhaps. It's that lead part. It's the part that you would hum if you were trying to let somebody know how a song went. You'd be like, oh yeah, it goes like this. And then you'd hum the melody. And finally, there is the harmony. And the harmony is a fancy way of saying the chords. It is the kind of group of notes that surround the melody and create a foundation for it to sit upon. So that harmony, it's a collection of notes that work well together, that create a pleasing sound, and you usually play the harmony notes at the same time. So this would be like strumming chords would be the harmony. And like I said, the rhythm applies to both melody and the harmony. And because of how humans interact with music, most of the time, rhythm is very intuitive. You don't need to teach rhythm as long as somebody knows how it's supposed to go. You don't need to usually explain what the rhythm is unless somebody's really struggling. So if you just play the melody, the rhythm comes out. Or if you just play the harmony, the rhythm comes out. So we won't need to focus so much on that one as important as it is. We don't need to specifically study it. But to talk more about why you would play the harmony or why you would play the melody, let's look at it from a couple different, maybe ukulele playing levels. And at a very beginning level, if you're looking at a tab and you see your part written out, that is what I would play. If you're picking notes and you've got the entire line, even if there's a bunch of spaces, that's your part. That's what you'd play. If you're looking at a chord chart or a lyric sheet that has the chords included and when you change them, I would just play the chords. That's your part. When you're playing by yourself, it's easy to kind of feel like you're in a vacuum and you don't have the support of other instruments playing with you. But if you can think of it as being part of a band inside your head, if you can imagine what the other parts might be doing, it allows you to have a little bit more kind of foundation in what you're playing and confidence in what you're playing, because you know that in a perfect world, you would be surrounded by the other parts and you wouldn't need to think about, oh, do I play harmony here? Do I play melody here? Do I need to switch back and forth? You play your part. And so the only problem with that is that you are usually playing by yourself when you're practicing, and it can be very tempting to try and want to sound like more is happening, more is going on at a time. And usually when you try and add more, you get into a more of an intermediate level. And this is where you get into like solo arranging. And you start creating that illusion of there being two instruments, even though you're just playing on one instrument. And in this kind of a situation, usually you would be playing the harmony in between the melody, because the melody is always going to take priority. That's the most recognizable part of the song, as long as it's played with rhythm, obviously. But if you have that melody, you can fit the chords in around it, because most melodies have gaps. Most melodies have room to breathe. Whether you are a vocalist or you play a wind instrument, you have to breathe in order to play more notes. So most melodies are written with this in mind, and there are phrases and there are breaks. And in those breaks and gaps, you would often strum a few chords to kind of highlight the harmony that is happening underneath the melody. If you want to learn more about this, I highly recommend James Hill's The Ukulele Way. That's what it's about. It's how to play solo arranging and how to capture the illusion of playing both parts at the same time. And James starts at a very basic level of just, picking pentatonic scales, and then how many different ways you can add harmony to it and start to weave that spell and that illusion. At an advanced level, usually what you're doing is you're listening and you're responding to what you hear. If I am playing by myself, oftentimes I'm going to try and fill up as much space as possible. So I'm going to be playing more chords. Certainly if I'm singing, I'm playing the chords. I'm not trying to pick as well, because then you'd have two different melodies kind of competing for the same space, I would be playing the harmony. But also, if I'm playing instrumentally or if I'm playing a melody, I'm going to try and produce that solo arrangement that's going to create the largest sound possible. And that is just lots of practice, working through material like the ukulele way or coming up with your own arrangements, figuring out how to put the melody and the harmony together. But more than that, an advanced player is going to listen to the music and hear which way the scales need to tip. If I'm playing with a couple people and one person is strumming the chords and they've got the rhythm dialed in, usually, unless they need help, which is hopefully not always the case, they can be in charge of that. I don't need to play anything that they're doing because they've already got that established, and all I will do by playing the same thing as them is just muddy up the sound, which can be a good effect sometimes. But if I want to use my musicality and my instrument the most effectively, what I'll often do is find an alternate part. And this is where the options just expand to pretty much limitless. What are you going to play to complement that part? It could be a little picking line that's not the melody, but it's a little fill thing. Maybe I want to play arpeggios on the chords so that I am still outlining the harmony along with the person who is strumming, but I'm playing it in a different way so that there's a texture and the notes are more drawn out. Maybe I want to play a little two-note funky picking part, kind of a thing, where I'm not doing much and I'm not taking over the melody because my part is intentionally simple and it intentionally is probably going to fit over the top of the harmony. The notes that I select would work with the chords that are being strummed. I could, again, add that additional texture in a different way. But it really depends on what is already happening and what the situation is. On the other side of the coin, if I am playing with somebody and they're playing a melody, I'm not going to play the melody with them because then we don't have any kind of harmony foundation. They can play the melody, do what they will, and I will play the chords. That is kind of the give and take of being the musician, especially playing live and playing Hawaiian music like I do. A lot of times you take turns trading off and you trade solos. You go around the circle and instead of strumming or playing your rhythmic part, you would stop doing that and you would play your lead. And then when you're done playing your lead, you would go back to whatever your harmony accompaniment would be, whatever that means to you or whatever the song needs on top of what already exists. But there's really no right answer. However, to get back to Marge's question, I think that if you are looking at a piece of music, unless the piece of music is very complex and there's a lot going on and you're not exactly sure how the parts go together, certainly I would back off a little bit and try and find something that was a little bit more appropriate for your skill level. But if you're looking at the tab, it's probably set up so that you are playing a part that makes sense by itself, whether it be just a melody or a melody with some chord fills or a full-on solo arrangement. Usually if you're already referencing something, that is what you should trust. Just play that. That's your part. And leave the musical choices until you get a little bit more comfortable with playing the song and you can do it from memory. Because once you can do things from memory, then you can start swapping pieces out and maybe doing a little bit more clever things. If you're, playing a solo arrangement off of a stiff transcription, maybe you could have a part where you go and you play some funky chords and you whistle a little melody over the top of it, or you hum a melody over the top of it. That kind of a thing where you can change things up. But you really need to have that comfort with the song that you're already looking at. And a lot of times that deer in the headlights is from option anxiety. And it sounds like you might just be giving yourself too many options. Oh, what do I play here? Just focus on the tab. take that for what it is. And if down the road, once you know the song, you feel like you want to change it and alter it, then you can start thinking about that. But to get started, I would just take your part, whether it be playing the chords or playing the melody. You've got to have that down before you can do anything fancy, and you can go from there. Now that's all fine and good, but I didn't outline many specifics. I thought I would leave the specifics to the next couple tracks that I'm going to share with you off of Dagan's EP. It's called Ho'ale, I'm Coming Home. I've known Dagan for many, many years. We've collaborated at shows. I've performed with him kind of as his backup band. We, for a while, were doing a singer-songwriter showcase at the local coffee shop, collaborating on bringing artists together to sit down. We called it the Listening Room, just a venue where it was very specifically about coming to listen to the artist and not just being background music, which is what we tend to do most of the rest of the time. But Dagan plays in kind of a Paniolo folk style, Paniolo country. I think he calls himself a Paniolo folk musician. So he's got lots of like Johnny Cash influence, but he also grew up here in Hawaii, so he's got kind of this weird haole boy vibes competing for each side of his soul, so to speak. So he's got the country and then the Hawaiian on the other side. And so this album we worked together on. He brought the songs to me and recorded the majority of the tracks at his house when a friend was over who was playing the Weisenborn slide guitar. And then I just added my parts on top of that. I added bass and ukulele and some background vocals, and then mixed the whole thing out. And so I have the song here in GarageBand. I'm running it in from a separate program because that's the only way I could figure out how to make this work with my brilliant tech mind. It's not going to probably sound the same as it does on the finished product because I want to be able to highlight specific tracks. I want to be able to share with you kind of the bones of the song and show the different parts that I added. But to get started, I'm just going to play through a little bit of the song so you can get a feel for the tempo and just kind of understand how it feels. And then we can talk about the different parts that are put together to create the song.
Far away from my island home, playing Gabby's Heat You Love It on my radio. It's all I had to keep alive these distant fading memories. Singing songs on my ukulele deep into the night, tears forming waves as they'd well up in my eyes. Overwhelming urge would take over me to go. Ho'ale, I'm coming home. Ho'ale, I'm coming home.
So, it's a fun little song. He wrote it about being away at college and missing the Hawaiian feeling and playing his ukulele to kind of remember what it was like to be here. And all of what I'm telling you and much more is available on Dagan's website. If you go check him out, Dagan Bernstein. I'll include a link in the episode notes. But to get started, I want to just play what Dagan came to me with, or kind of what Dagan's parts are and what I added on top of it. So here's just what Dagan was playing. He was on the guitar and singing on top of it. And you'll notice the guitar is kind of quiet all by itself because the rest of the song comes in around and fills it out. The guitar doesn't need to be the lead.
I recall the days far away from my island home, playing Gabby's Heat You Love It on my radio. That's all I had to keep alive these distant fading memories.
And so on his voice, there's a little bit of a double happening to get that chorus effect that he wanted.
Tears forming waves as they'd well up in my eyes.
So that's what we started with. And then what I was hearing on top of that was some strummed ukulele. I think it starts around here.
Memories.
So this next time around I added,
Singing songs on my ukulele.
this is actually a soprano ukulele I was playing here.
Tears forming waves as they'd well up in my eyes.
Just kind of a chalang-a-lang thing that went along with, but just to create the texture, because a lot of times when you have guitar and ukulele, because the instruments sound so different, it's very possible to get different textures by playing them at the same time. Whereas if you had two ukuleles playing the same chords, that might sound a little bit woofy and muddy. But with the guitar and the ukulele, it tends to sound okay, which is why I thought it'd be a good idea to grab right for this just strumming ukulele part, because it kind of works together with the guitar to create that deeper rhythmic foundation.
Go to sleep and dream, but there's no other place that I'd rather be.
So that's just the ukulele part with the vocals without the guitar.
Far across the sea, ku home now, ku aina aloha, o mau mau.
And then there's the guitar again.
I'm coming home.
And so in addition to the strumming ukulele, Dagan wanted me to try and capture the feel of him playing his ukulele off at college, dreaming of home, with my lead work. So that's the solo, but I also played fills all around the song. Right here, I'm just doing an arpeggio.
I'm coming home. Oh, I'm coming home. Oh, coming home. Oh, I'm coming home.
And so the trick to doing work like this is always finding what the missing part is, right? That's the big question mark, is what isn't being covered already. And so I played one strumming ukulele part. There's already a guitar part, which is also kind of strumming. So I'm not going to play another strumming part if I want to play a third something. That would just be too much strumming. I could do a little arpeggio thing, which is kind of what I have here in my lead part. But the lead part also contains fills and little diddles. Let me play from the beginning so you can hear more so what I was playing. There's those little riffs. And now I'm just going to try and stay out of the way of his voice, but add little fills between.
Playing Gabby's Heat, you love it, on my radio. It's all I had to keep alive these distant fading memories. Singing songs on my ukulele deep into the night. Tears forming waves as they'd well up in my eyes.
It's almost like a call and response. He sings something and then I play something, and we just go back and forth. And you can even see it in the waveforms of the song, is that when he's not singing, there's a little ukulele part. And when I'm playing, he's usually not singing so much.
Oh, I'm coming home.
But if I bring all the parts in now, he added a shaker.
Scan the far horizon with Hawaii on my mind.
You can hear his double parts there. And that's everything.
But there's no other place that I'd rather be than home in these islands far across the sea. Go home now, go aina aloha, o.
The trick is really knowing when not to play, knowing when to be done. Because with modern recording, you get as many tracks as you want, and you can multi-track just like crazy. And really, there's no limit to the amount of different parts you can add. But at a certain point, the song is just saturated and there's nothing else to play. It depends on the song. It depends on the textures you're going for. But it's really an art to try and find the parts that are going to be different. Somebody who's really super good at parts is Dan from the Black Keys. Dan Arbach, I think. The new Black Keys album, Let's Rock, just from the first note is so many guitars all playing on top of each other, but it's so beautifully layered and composed that each one has its own thing and each one adds to the texture. And it's really interesting to hear how many different things are going on to work together to form the whole, which is a really banging album that's lots of fun to listen to. So that's an interesting one to check out, kind of as reference for how to really push the envelope as far as adding parts. With this song, it was a lot more laid back. It's kind of a slow, quiet song. I didn't want to go too hard. Otherwise, I'm going to cover up the vibe. And all of a sudden, it's just like ukulele's doing everything everywhere. There is a time and place just to not play or to not add more. There are really as many approaches as there are songs, and each one is going to require a different set of parts, a different set of things that you might want to play. And this next song is a lot more rowdy. It's the most rowdy song on the EP. And I thought it would be a fun contrast to kind of listen to what the differences are between the two songs, but also what I played or didn't play in this song, and you can hear kind of my approach to that. So let's listen to kind of an overview of the first few verses, and then we'll break it down.
On the island of Hawaii, down Keala o Keawe out towards the bay, all the Paniolo have one place to go, the old Ho Now Now Rodeo. On the island of Hawaii, down Keala o Keawe out towards the bay. All the Paniolo have one place to go, the old Ho Now rodeo. Keiki a laughing, Makua a clapping, they're roping and a riding, bugging and a racing, full of aloha, enjoying the show at the old Ho Now rodeo. Keiki a laughing, Makua a clapping, they're roping and a riding, bugging and a racing, full of aloha, enjoying the show at the old Ho Now rodeo. I have such great...
So I'd like to give major props to Dagan, who kind of rewrote the feel of the song or the arrangement of the song, like the night before he came over here and we recorded it. Because that song was just one that wasn't working with the recordings that he made. And so I asked him, it's like, well, you just want to come over here and try and lay down some stuff. And to go along with my different setup with my different mics and my room, he also had a fresh arrangement, which I think was fabulous and far better than what he had before. It really brought the song to life, which is really to say that if you're recording, you want to put gold in. We say gold in, gold out. The best recordings are the ones that you don't have to mess with a whole lot. And the very beginning of it all is how well the music itself is put together. If the song is interesting and engaging just with one guy singing and strumming the guitar, then it's going to be a lot easier to create that vibe when you start layering parts on top of it and creating the full recorded track. It really helps to have that interest in that way from the arrangement standpoint, because otherwise you're just trying to put fairy dust on a turd, kind of, and it doesn't usually work out. So the easiest recordings are the ones that are going to be of songs that are well thought out, well put together, and then you can build from there. So once again, let's listen to just what Dagan brings to the table and start adding tracks in and go from there. So just cowboy guitar all the way through on this track.
On the island of Hawaii, down Keala o Keawe out towards the bay. All the Paniolo have one place to go, the old Ho Now rodeo. On the island of...
So you have the cowboy guitar. To go along with that, I put in a bass part that was kind of a very typical kind of a thing. Just barely squeezing it out. I'm not much of a bass player.
On the island of Hawaii,
but that's sort of our foundation there. And then on top of that, I have been dabbling a little bit in steel guitar. So I put a steel guitar track.
Rodeo. On the island of Hawaii, down Keala o Keawe out towards the bay. All the Paniolo have one place to go, the old Ho Now rodeo. Keiki a laughing, Makua a clapping, they're roping and a riding.
And if we take the steel out and put in my ukulele part,
of aloha, enjoying the show at the old Ho Now.
My ukulele part's kind of like a double time hula strum sort of thing.
Keiki a laughing, Makua a clapping, they're roping and a riding, mugging and a racing, full of aloha, enjoying the show at the old Ho Now.
And as you hear these tracks by themselves, they might sound a little bit funny, like they don't sound super good by themselves. That's because what you're hearing are the mixed tracks. So they're meant to go all together, and when they're all together, they sound like the entire song, but by themselves, often a track won't sound like you expect it to, because when it's by itself, it's had a certain amount of processing done on it to make it fit with the other tracks. So when you hear it just soloed like this, oftentimes it's not what you think you might be hearing, but that's really the magic that makes the mix work, is that you put everything together and you don't necessarily mix everything individually. It's got to work as a whole.
Now, rodeo. I have such great memories.
So that's our foundation.
Sitting in the bleachers back in the day, watching the sun set down the coast at the old.
And you can hear that
now, rodeo.
just this, which is basically the bones of the song.
I have such great.
It's got a vibe to it, right? It kind of pushes along, and it really is strong from an arrangement standpoint. Dagan changes keys. He makes it interesting by how he's arranged the song. And here's my solo as we move down in keys again. I really liked how that turned out. I was just winging it, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't.
Waiting their turn for Po Vayu at the old Ho Now rodeo. The brothers are parked under the banyan trees, sucking on the brews and shooting the breeze.
A lot of times when you're recording, if you put a vocal double on, it'll make the vocals sound a lot stronger. And Dagan did this for a number of his songs just to thicken up his voice and to make it sound like this kind of like a group of people singing with him. And that's what this double is it's just two of his voices.
For Po Vayu at the old Ho Now rodeo.
And usually you'll mix one of them quite a lot quieter.
No other place that I'd rather be than a Kanikapila with the old slack key. Coming together from Napopo at the old Ho Now rodeo. No other place that I'd rather.
So in this song, because I was playing the steel, it really felt like I didn't need to play the ukulele leads like I did on the other song. I was able to play that on the steel. Usually you're not going to have a bunch of competing instruments as far as creating lead parts, unless you're the Black Keys, because it's really easy to start stepping on each other. That's why when somebody plays a solo, it's their turn to play, and no one else plays solos unless you're rude. So that's how it works. Is by everybody else not playing, it creates that space in the middle for there to be a lead. So if I was also playing ukulele leads, it would probably get kind of busy, and the ukulele and the steel guitar would both lose their impact instead of one of them being able to be the focus. So that's a song called Ho Now Rodeo off of Dagan Bernstein's album Ho Ale, I'm Coming Home. Actually, it's an EP. I think you still call it an album. Not so sure. But you can find it on his website, daganmusic.com. You can go listen to the album. He's got it available for free. If you want to support his work and the work of other original artists, he's got links to different streaming platforms and also the Bandcamp. We talk about Bandcamp a lot on the podcast because that is really the best way to get your money directly to the artists who are creating the music. Check that out. There's also like some lyric videos and stuff that he's put together for the release. Thanks to Dagan for A, involving me with the project because I had a lot of fun putting it together, and B, allowing me to share the songs on the podcast and break them down for you folks because I think it's always so interesting. It's one of my favorite parts of playing music is when I get to go play on somebody else's song. Because when I play on my own stuff, it's very close to the chest. It's kind of, I don't know. I have a very specific vision in my mind, and I don't necessarily always meet that vision. And so it's not always super inspiring to play on my own stuff. There are only a few times where it's been like, yes, that's what I wanted it to be. But when I play on other people's songs, I don't have that preconception. That's theirs to have. And so anything that I add for myself, it's fun. And then hopefully it matches up with their vision. And if it doesn't, I hope they'd let me know and I can try again and try and match, find a place in the middle that matches what they're trying to accomplish. And I've played with Dagan for a long time. He knows my style really well and what I do. I know what he does. And when he had these new songs and he shared them with me, it's like, oh yeah, I can see how I fit into these songs and what I can add to them. And it was a really enjoyable process. It was good fun. And also fun from kind of a production standpoint in that Dagan very specifically wanted the album to sound kind of vintage. And so there were many moments as I was mixing it where I was trying to capture that old school vibe. I wasn't trying to go for perfect or very finely tuned. A lot of Hawaiian music you hear these days is like very precise and crisp and clear. And that's fine. It seems to do well at the hokus. But to me, and I guess to Dagan as well, it's not super interesting. I'd rather listen to older Hawaiian music that's maybe a little bit more rough, where it was just a bunch of guys in the studio with a couple of mics and they just played the song, and it was the song and the musicians that was so special rather than the recording, production, smoke and mirrors. And so that's what we were kind of trying to accomplish, is just like quick takes, not really overdoing it, just let the warts be part of the song, that's okay, and just putting it together from there and trying to capture that Connie Kapila vibe, as he writes on his website. So thanks for coming along for the ride today. I hope that was interesting. Thanks to Marge for submitting her initial question that kind of sparked all this off and really got my rear into gear to make this episode and to break the tracks out and get to a point where I could highlight them separately. Like I said, go check out Dagan's music if you liked either of the tunes. There's much more. He's got a couple other albums you can check out. The Live Ukulele podcast is published on the first and third Saturdays of every month. Please subscribe so you don't miss any episodes, and go check out liveukulele.com and see what I've got available there. There are lots of free resources. There are some paid resources which help offset the time that I put into the podcast. Check those out if you want to support what I do. And I'll catch you in the next episode. Until then, aloha.